Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kayla and it has been a while since I filmed a video, like at least a month, so I feel a little awkward about it, but I've been busy and going through things and been a busy month or so, but yeah, I'm not gonna get into that in this video. It's not like in a bad way, it's just like my brain has not been in a like sitting down and filming place. And I even kind of stopped reading a ton the last like week or so of June. It happens. You gotta be kind to yourself about all of that. Reading fluctuates. But the reason I'm talking about that is because this finally, like 2 weeks late, middle of July, is my June wrap up. And I actually had a great June. I read, I can't remember the exact number, 5 or 6 books, but they were like all really good, so that's amazing. That rarely happens. I feel like if you read like 3 books they can all be good, but like once you get to like 5 or 6 it's like you're gonna have like one stinker. Did I say stinker? Like I feel like a Disney Channel character saying words like that. I don't actually remember what most of them were, and I think they were all either library books or audiobooks, so I don't like have any of them physically. The first book I read in June was The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead, which is the first book I've read by Ashley Winstead. I own In My Dreams I'll Hold It Knife, but haven't read it. I'll probably be reading it once, like, you know, dark academia season, the best book reading season begins. So it was like my introduction to her writing, and it is, I believe, her first like adult thriller. I know she writes like adult romances, which I actually want to read too, even though they don't super sound like my thing plot wise. Her writing is just so good. I believe, what did I give this book? Yeah, I gave The Last Housewife 4.5 stars. Absolutely loved it. Okay, so basically it follows this young woman, I guess. Yeah, she's like 30-ish, so my age, I guess, named Shay, who she basically, the story starts because she's listening to a podcast that like one of her high school friends did, but they like haven't kept in touch. She's really just like listening to his podcast or whatever, and it's like a true crime podcast, and the true crime thing he is talking about is the suicide of this girl Laurel, who actually was Shay's best friend in college. So that's how she finds out that her best friend from college is dead, who she like lost contact with basically at graduation. And she's kind of like, what the fuck? Like, I don't believe, she doesn't really believe that she killed herself. The guy who is doing the podcast doesn't believe she killed herself. And the crime, or like the crime scene, all this stuff is very similar to in college, one of their other best friends and roommates, she also killed herself. Clementine, I believe her name is, and so it's like, so Shay's like, this is suspicious, and basically massive trigger warnings for this whole book. It ends up basically being about like grooming and cults and sexual assault and sexual violence. There's a lot of like graphic kind of sexual violence in it, not overly so, like no one like on-screen graphic assault or anything like that, but it's this cult where like these men have power and the women don't, and so it's just a lot of like yicky things going on there. And I was just blown away by the writing. I don't know, it was so like atmospheric. It was just like, she didn't use too many words, but she also didn't use too few. It just like, sometimes you just read a book and you're just like, this person is just like so like absolutely skilled at what they do. Like they're just, it's not like necessarily like the most beautiful poetic book you've read or whatever, but it's just like, this is good. Like this is legitimately like so good, and like I now like trust this author with anything in some ways because I know that her writing will be there to like back it up. I didn't give it a 5 because, partly because some of the stuff like freaked me out a little bit, like, and partly because there was a character in there who I felt like should have been queer and wasn't, and I just felt like it was like she was very queer coded and like then wasn't queer, and that just annoyed me. It was like I was reading this in Pride Month, I just wanted to see someone be gay, and the romance was just kind of what, like, she had a thing for this guy who does the podcast. When they were in high, they like had a thing for, I don't know, so then they like have a thing again as like adults or whatever, and I was just kind of like, all right, I feel like you're going through like some massive trauma unpacking right now, because that's really what all the book is about. It's about like her unpacking her trauma and like telling the story of what happened to her in college and like how her friends ended up dead and all that kind of stuff and the trauma they went through. And I'm like, I really don't think you should be like pursuing a romantic relationship when you're like literally like, oh my god, I was groomed. But whatever. Like, but I really liked the main character. I thought she was very complex. I love like morally gray protagonists. I love people who are like, I did these messed up things, and you're like, you were 19 years old. Oh no, you made some mistakes, you were a child. As a 34-year-old, a 19-year-old is like low-key a child to me. Like, not love kids. But yeah, so I definitely recommend it, but definitely look up trigger warnings and like, yeah, be prepared for that. It all has a point. It's not like gratuitous or glorifying. It's very much like the blame is on the abusers. That's all the point of it. But yeah, I really loved it. I just felt like it was just like very, very good, very good. I'm excited to read more by Ashley Winstead. And next up is my first 5-star of the month, which is Chlorine by Jade Song. This is poetry. This is like I can't even describe to you what this book is about, because, okay, so it is about a girl. It's about this girl, Ren, who is, it's been a while since I read it, but I believe she is Chinese American, and it's basically the story of her like childhood, girlhood, early teenage years, all that kind of stuff. And she is a competitive swimmer and wants to be a mermaid, I guess is the way to describe it. That is a way to describe it. But it's so much more than that honestly feels like reductive to describe it as like, this is about this competitive swimmer who wants to be a mermaid, because at its core it's just about like being a girl and puberty and the shitty things men do. And it is sapphic, like she's bisexual and has like a relationship complicated situation thing with her best friend, which like I love, because hasn't every gay girly had that. It's like there's body horror, there's fantasy, there is folklore, there is commentary on rape culture, there are lines that are just like, she's talking about being a mermaid, but I'm like, I feel that as a woman. Like, it's just like, it's mermaid as commentary on being a girl, and being a girl who doesn't feel like you fit in, as like she's the only Asian girl like in her friend group, if not her entire school. She is queer and figuring out what that means. All these things, like she's just kind of a little weirdo, and one of those things is she wants to be a mermaid, but that's not like the point of it all. But it also like is. And I cannot recommend this book enough. Like, absolutely look up trigger warnings again, because there are some sketchy little things that are in it, you know, like there's a coach who's kind of a creep, and there's, I mean, sexual assault and all this, and then there's also some like body horror elements and some eating disorder talk and stuff like that, but it just is so important, I think, for women or anyone who wants to understand women or whatever, or to read, because it is just, it includes all the mess and the grossness and the stupid shit of girlhood with this, like, looking at it from this almost like outside perspective, because she's like, well, I'm a mermaid, so that was like human shit. And you're just like, in so many ways, that's like sometimes what it feels like as an adult to look back at like the stupid shit you did when you were like 13 and you're like, well, I was a baby, like, and now I'm a human. So yeah, I mean, I'm like, part of me wants to read quotes, but I feel like I could read the whole book. But let me be clear so you cannot misconstrue my motives. While my journey may seem lonesome, I was never alone in my scars. I was the sole Chlorine mermaid on my team, but I was not the only girl to self-mutilate. As proud athletes, it was expected our mutilations were a natural course of action to reach peak condition. Some cut, some bulked, some purged. It's all the same. Together, we girls molded our bodies and selves into what Coach Jim wanted, what we wanted. Just like, fuck. So good. So good. I listened to the audiobook, which was like really good. The narrator almost has like this like creepy voice, and there's like two narrators because there's like letters from her childhood friend in there, and it's so good. It's so good. Like, I've already made my girlfriend read it and she loved it. And if you like weird books, if you like girlhood, if you like mermaids, if you're looking for a summer read that's like a little like horror adjacent but not full horror, a little fantasy adjacent but not full fantasy, just fun summer vibes, I can't recommend it enough. Then this is technically like my lowest rated of the month, but it was still great. I read Fun Home by Allison Bechdel, and I gave it 3.5, but that, I think it's just about me. I think that it's a graphic novel, basically memoir about Allison Bechdel's childhood and early young adulthood and stuff. And she was born, she's like the same age as my mom, which is kind of weird. I told my mom to read it, she liked it. But like growing up in like the 60s and 70s and stuff, and she's a queer woman. She's famous for, if you ever heard of like the Bechdel test, with like, do movies pass the Bechdel test, about like, do women have a conversation about anything other than men? Like, she's from that, but that's been twisted. That's like a lesbian thing actually, that's been twisted to just like be about women. Not gonna get into that. But basically, yeah, so it's like all these little stories that it's kind of like little, each chapter is like a contained story, but also there's like an overarching story. The art style is kind of simple but not beautiful. The comic it's funny at points. It made me cry because her dad died and my dad is dead, so you know. My main issue with it was that I felt like there was a showing off of vocabulary in this way that felt almost like an attempt to make it more inaccessible, like that this graphic novel is almost meant for a certain audience and she doesn't want people who won't like get it and don't know these big words to like be able to access it, which I don't always love. And I'm obviously, I haven't read anything about her or know anything about her and her motives behind that. Maybe she talks like a freaking weirdo and that's legitimately how she talks, and this is just how she would write. She was like an English major or whatever, so maybe she just loves big words. But I know a lot of English majors, and while they use like a couple big words, it's like, it felt like at points like she was temporarily, like intentionally trying to like confuse people or like whatever. But overall, I think it as like a queer book, like a part of the queer canon, I think it's like really important to read it. Really, well, it is nothing like my experience of growing up queer. It is a very important part of history and all that. Her family relationship is really heartbreaking and interesting, and like the push and pull between like sometimes feeling like she almost wanted to be a boy, but then like wanting to be like masculine, but then also like being a woman and loving women, and like all this stuff was just, I think, really interesting and important to read and eye-opening for me and my own ever evolving journey with my own sexuality. And yeah, so I'm very glad I read it, and everything with her dad just absolutely broke me. So yeah, I do recommend it if you're looking, and it's so easy to read. I mean, I think I only read it like at night, and I think I finished it in like 3 days, just like in the bath or whatever, you know. And so yeah, definitely recommend it. It's just, you might need to have like a dictionary with you. I just honestly was just like, I get it in context. If I don't know exactly what this word means, whatever. So yeah, and now I kind of want to see like the play about it, because I think that'd be fun. Then my next 5-star, and actually my last 5-star of the month, I only got 2 more books, so it's 5. But my next 5-star was You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi, which I have been wanting to read for so long. Just the way people talk about it, I'm just like, this sounds so good. But then I was also scared because I'm not a fan of age gap relationships. But what the book is it follows, I read it like physically instead of audiobooks, so I don't actually know how to pronounce her name. It's apparently pronounced Faye, which I went back and forth in my head between like Faye and Faye. But Faye, it follows her. She's, I want to say she's like late 20s, she's around 30. Everybody in all these books is around 30, I guess. But a couple years ago, her husband died in a car accident, which obviously super traumatizing. So she's really been struggling with all that trauma and all that grief, and that's just so much grief. Like when you're in your 20s, like no one else really understands that. Like most of your other friends aren't married, let alone married and having lost their spouse. Like it's a pain like no one understands. She has her best friend, and that's great and everything, but she's kind of been scared to date. She makes art, she's an artist, but a lot like she hasn't really done anything like big art-wise since her husband died. But all her art is really about like the grief and everything, and I just was reading it like, I want to see this art. But like, so the book is really, it follows her as she starts dating again. That's kind of how it begins, and she ends up in it's like a friendship, but they're both kind of into each other with this guy, and he's lovely, but like she's still kind of scared because like opening your heart is just like really hard. Like she's had kind of like one night stand kind of vibes, but like opening your heart after having your heart crushed is so hard. But he invites her to come like home with him to like the island, which is just kind of like a nameless Caribbean island. And to do like an art exhibit. She gets chosen to be in like this art show, which is like an amazing opportunity. So cool. So she goes and does it, and he's like, we're gonna be staying at my dad's house, like, but no pressure. We have like different rooms, everything. Like he's very not pressury, even though like, you know, he's kind of one of those guys who's like, but like, I'm investing in this friendship, like something's gonna happen, right? But he doesn't get like super nice guy about it. Like it's complicated. But yeah, but she ends up kind of, when she meets his dad, she kind of ends up falling for his dad instead. And I feel like the way people talk about it is a lot of focusing on that relationship, and as someone who doesn't really go for age gap relationships, that's kind of like a major no-ick for me. It takes a lot to make me care about that relationship, and there has to be something else going on. So to present the book as just about this relationship is really, like, the relationship is part of it, but what her and his name is Allison, again with the pronunciation, like bond over really is like the grief that they share. Like his wife her like also died, and so like to find someone who understands that is really important. And yeah, and a lot of criticism of this book is that it's like, it's messy, she's unlikable, she's hurting people. And I really just come back to like the number of books that get praised for similar things. Like everyone loves like Conversations with Friends or other messy girl, you know, like fucking Gone Girl or whatever, like that. She does shitty things, like, but it's okay because they're like pretty little white girls. And but when it's a black girl who's like a badass and doesn't fucking take shit and like stands up for herself and has a smart ass mouth and like fucks because she likes to and like all these things, like then it becomes like, this was too much. She was really unlikable. Like, we all know what you're saying. Like, it's not okay for a black girl to be messy like that. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying. And you can not like a book, but like those specific criticisms are racist. But yeah, it's just like, she does things that so many other characters in like that hot, messy girl summer type of book do, and I feel like she gets judged a lot harsher for it because she is black. And I found personally that of the books I've read where people are doing messy, kind of selfish things, that she had more of a reason than almost anyone else. Like, she literally went through like a trauma, like, and is just trying to like find joy. And so much of the book is about like her finding joy and her finding like herself again. And like, that's the point of the book. The point of the book isn't about this relationship. It isn't about any of that. It's about her, and it's about healing from grief and trauma. And I think that it was amazing. I want to read everything Akwaeke Emezi has written. But yeah, so absolutely recommend it. Like 5 stars. Like, I literally just like think about it all the time. I want to like own it and reread it, and so good. Like another great like summer book. And I did also read this for Pride Month because yeah, Akwaeke Emezi is non-binary, uses they them pronouns. I might have, while talking about this, used she her, but it was because I was talking about Faye and then got messed up. I will fix that if I did, but I hope I didn't. But yeah, so that was like a Pride Month read. 3 out of 5 of the books I read were like Pride Month things. I got a bunch of other books that I wanted to read for Pride, but the last week of the month just fell apart. But yeah, Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. 5 stars. Read it now. Then after that book, I started Beach Read. Loved it, got 40% of the way through, suddenly didn't care about it anymore, and had to like temporarily DNF it, which was like so annoying because I was like having the best time. But whatever, I'll read it. I'll read it when I'm more in a place, when I next want a little beach read. Oh my god, look what she did there. And the last book that I finished in June was Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. I'm going with that. Which is actually like an older thriller. It was published in 2017, I think. Like, I went back and watched some people's like vlogs about it, and they're all from like 2018, 2019. I was like, okay. But I believe that Gabby Reeds said that it was one of her like favorite thrillers that she's read, and I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars because it was just like blowing my mind. Like, it follows kind of like 2 POVs and a split timeline, which is like a lot. Like, you're either a multiple POV split timeline fan or you're not, and if you're not, like, you won't connect with this book. But I love split timelines. Like, I find that so much fun. I love multiple POVs. So the main arc of the story is about this woman, Louise, who, she's like a single mom. and she one night kind of has like a flirtation and a kiss with a man in a bar, and then goes into work the next day and finds out that he is her new boss, kind of. She's a receptionist at like a psychiatric clinic, and he's like the new psychiatrist, so he's like kind of her boss, but I assume there's somebody like above both of them that like both of them kind of report to. But yeah, so terrible. He's her boss, he's married. Fuck. And the other point of view is actually from his wife, and then the split timeline is also like his wife, but like when she was like 18. So, and it's basically just kind of about like Louise ending up in this kind of like messy affair with this man, but also about like her and the wife Adele like become friends, and like both of those things are like real to Louise. And then you get like Adele's point of view, and like it feels like she like knows that like Louise is having an affair with your husband, and you're like, are you like being friends with her to like do something messed up here? And then you're also like, the husband feels like he's like abusive, and he's very like controlling of like finances and medications and all this stuff, and it's like, is the wife actually like crazy, or is he crazy? Is he a murderer? Are the husband and wife in on fucking with Louise? Like, what is going on here? And all this stuff in the past, you're like, what are we even like building to here? Like what? And there's like information in the past. There's lucid dreaming, like fully like lucid dreaming, astral projection. Like you need to know that like going in, because I've seen some reviews where people were like, I didn't like that part. So it's like, it's a thriller, but it has a speculative element, which I think is my favorite kind of thriller. I don't know, I feel like it's like adds a little something different. The twists were wild. Like a couple of them I kind of predicted, but I didn't expect it to like happen the way that it did. And I was just like, what is going on? Like I can't even describe it, but it was really fun. It was like a really fun time. And I feel like if you're looking for like a thriller that like nobody's really talking about anymore, but was a big deal at the time and is absolutely batshit, like I definitely recommend it. I believe it was made into like a mini series, and I've heard that was good, but I also heard that some of the twists fell a little flat and some of the changes they chose to make in the mini series. But I don't know, I feel like maybe when I forget some of the things that happened in the book, I'll watch the miniseries. But yeah, and I feel like if you watch the miniseries, you can probably also read the book, as long as you're okay with like the big twists getting spoiled, but I don't know. Yeah, so that was my reading month. I'm in the middle of like a lot of books right now, and my library's like, give them back to us, please. And I'm like, can I just have like 3-4 more days? So yeah, I've already read like 2 or 3 books for July, which is great for me. And hopefully I won't just randomly have a week where I don't read anything. And yeah, but I'm happy that all the books I read were either like my lowest rating was 3.5, and that was just because I think for other people that book could be a 4 or 5 star. It's just me. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. What was your favorite book of the month? I love to hear that. I hope you also had a good reading month. I feel like I've been seeing a lot of people like have not so great reading months lately. Read more weird books. Yeah, so thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see you a little sooner than a month from now.